Welcome to episode 115 of Geeks Who Like Sports. As always, in beautiful Los Angeles, California, I am sunburnt Ray Carcillo, alongside my best friend Tyler over in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Lee Elias. Lee, how are you doing today, sir?
Ray, I'm not sunburnt at all, and I appreciate that you're being vulnerable and telling us all of that. But listen, I'm doing well. I'm excited for this episode.
Just don't touch my shoulders. Just don't touch my shoulders.
I'm not going to touch you at all, so that works out for everybody listening. I want to welcome you all. We're doing something really different today. We're recording this episode live on Clubhouse, hoping to have live guests on the show for the first time ever. So whether you're listening to this recording or listening to it live, if you want to come on stage with us, ask a question, our producer Caitlin's here. You can message her. She'll message you. If you want to ask a question or have a comment, make sure you jump on stage for a few minutes, and we'd love to go back and forth with the audience. And then on top of that, we'll do a little Q&A at the end, because we're expecting 6 million people not to come into this room, but maybe 5 or 6. That would be nice. But right now, I'm looking forward to this episode because there's a lot to talk about, and a lot of, again, the geek and sports guys have blessed us again this week. I feel like there's a lot of things happening.
Yeah, it's been a very, very busy week. Of course, we've got NHL expansion. We've got the NBA Finals continuing. We've got some news out from the Washington football team. Surprise, surprise. A lot of baseball stuff. We got a little Olympics, a little tennis, a little Euro Cup. And a lot of Marvel, as usual. We got some interesting stuff in the video game front from Steam and from Netflix. But as always, we are kicking off with Loki, the season finale. Notice I did not say series finale. Spoilers ahead, folks. Spoiler alert, spoilers.
You've seen it. If you listen to the show, you've seen it. If you haven't, what are you doing?
Yes, and you are very aware at this point that there is going to be a season 2 of Loki. Episode 6 was very interesting. It was less action driven, very much kind of an info dump, but it was a necessary info dump, as Lee and I were right. Multiverse is happening. Kang the Conqueror is coming. And we are basically, they did an amazing thing here, is that they showed Jonathan Majors as not necessarily as Kang the Conqueror, but they called him He Who Remains, a character from the comic that is typically an alien, the last of the TVA in the comic continuity, and they kind of combined him with Kang's Immortus character, which for those who don't know, that's a Kang from the far future who is basically immortal, as his name would imply, and he's lived almost his entire life working to make sure the other Kangs, the rogue Kangs, which was actually very well explained in this episode.
It really was.
Don't take over. Yeah.
Yeah, it really was. So a few things happened in this episode. Again, we're not going to recap it because most of you watched it. I thought it was just Jonathan Majors did a brilliant job introducing the character. That's what I'm going to call him. It's Kang, obviously. Yeah. But yes, they've made him powerful in a sense of that he is. You can see how this is not Thanos, but it is equally or bigger a threat than Thanos already.
Yes.
Which I love.
Yeah.
2 is, Ray knows this, I love time travel. There's so much time travel and time stuff with this character that I'm going to probably be very satisfied. Not to mention now that we know that the entire Phase 4 is going to be just variants all over the place of all our favorite characters. We'll get into a theory on that in a minute. One thing I do want to comment on this episode, Ray, and I got to say, I think a lot of people miss this. We talked about it on our live stream on streamlounge.io. But I think a lot of people are missing the fact that they turned Loki from villain to hero in this episode, okay? I was in another Clubhouse room actually yesterday, and they were talking Kang. I get it. No one mentioned this. There is a very powerful moment towards the end of this episode after Sylvie throws Loki into the TVA, what he thinks is the normal TVA, where Tom Hiddleston clearly goes through a transformation and makes the choice. This is something that is famous in comics. It's famous in movies. He makes the choice to turn from villain to hero and immediately starts to try and save everybody. This is a massive, massive shift, not just for the character, but for the MCU. It also is a brilliant way of thanking Tom Hiddleston and saying, look, we want you to stick around for a while because you really can't die anyway as Loki. All right? Yeah. But it's a hero Loki. And people were discussing yesterday, Ray, that Loki can't be good. Of course he can. There's an infinite amount of him. He can be whatever he wants to be.
Exactly. You have this entire thing where he literally just met 24 Lokis from a variety of different realms and the looks and feels. I mean, that's the whole point of Kid Loki. Kid Loki's entire storyline is his redemption. He's seeking redemption for accidentally killing Thor. right? Like, I mean, that's the whole thing with him joining the Young Avengers, and that's another thing that we'll get into possibly later.
By
is
the way,
that
I think
Marvel is clearly setting this up.
I think that was the story that Thor tells in Ragnarok about stabbing him after turning himself into a snake. That maybe that went wrong, but look, man. Again, classic comic book kind of fandom. You can't make him good. They just made him an alligator. You can do whatever you want to do in an infinite universe. That's just the way it works. Now, a couple things, Ray, some predictions or thoughts. Not predictions. They're theories I have for you. Okay, ones we didn't get to discuss now that I've had some more time to digest the episode, right? Here's the theory for you. If Sylvie is a female Loki, right, I started thinking, well, that means Thor would be a female, maybe, most likely as well, in that universe, right?
Potentially.
Do we know any female Thors that might be coming up?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. We know,
right?
We know Jane Foster in Love and Thunder.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Jane Foster is the Thor from that universe, right? That's my first theory or possibility. All right, that's a way to bring Sylvie back in.
Yeah, and there are other female Thors in history. That's the thing too, is that we also saw we saw Frog Thor. Right. In this series as well. Like, we know that everybody has a variant, that every possibility is potentially out there. So
right. Well, and that's the other thing too, is that they did not explain why Sylvie was pruned from her timeline, and obviously
no, they still haven't did that.
I think they're going to use a movie to do that, and I think Thor: Love and Thunder would be an obvious one. It might not go that way, but that was one. Another one is, again, the character we saw, Kang. I think they did a good job for the people that know the comic books. They did a really great job of explaining, okay, this is not the evil Kang. This is, again, the end of time Kang, the guy who's figured it out. He did do what he said he was going to do. I love this confidence in, like, well, what's the worst that could happen? I'm just going to end back up here anyway, which is going to be probably the big twist at the end of whatever Phase 4 or Phase 5, whenever they want to get to that. Right? But a great job explaining. There are so many versions of this guy that are going to come up. I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the ties into the Fantastic Four. There's so much they could do with this. I don't think they'll go to the expanse with it, right? No. And I think how they handle Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and some of these other films coming up will teach us probably how they're going to take on Kang. Look, I wasn't hopeful that we'd see him that much, but that was one of the best entrances I've ever seen in Marvel. Yeah. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and much like the timeline itself, I agree with you that Phase 4 will actually just end up coming full circle with some minor differences and some new characters at the end of it, because, like you said, at the end of the day, the only way to really, truly achieve peace is to have Immortus, He Who Remains, kind of in charge, which, by the way, quick fun fact, the first characters to encounter He Who Remains in the comics is actually Thor and Jane Foster. So it'd be interesting to see again what happens with Love and Thunder. I think there's going to be some heavy ramifications there for sure. But you're going to get a lot from the few movies. Not so much from Shang-Chi, I think, and from Eternals. I think what you're going to see from those two films, and we've talked about this also on StreamLaunch.io, is you're going to see these movies kind of act as origin stories and then probably end kind of like WandaVision, kind of like end with this crisis. But Spider-Man and Doctor Strange 2 obviously are going to be basically, I think, are going to hit the ground running with this.
So yeah, and we did say on our stream on StreamLaunch.io that fans can forget easily that typically in a phase, all the films take place at the same time or about the same time. Like, that's one of the fallacies people. Well, we waited 4 years. You waited 4 years, but 3 days went by in the MCU. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. So I totally agree with you. We know in Eternals they hinted that something happened that brings them back. It could be the Descendants. It could be this. There's a lot of different ways they could do it. But it's going to be a fun jump. I think you're 100%, Spider-Man and Doctor Strange are going to push us into Phase 5, right? Or I should say into Quantumania, right? And then from there, we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really interesting to see where everything happens. And again, looking forward to it. Again, the fact that Kang is also so related to the Fantastic Four, that he's technically a descendant of Reed Richards or prescendant depending on, or ancestor depending on what timeline. Like, I think there's going to be a lot going on with that. But speaking of all the timey-wimey, spacey-wacy stuff, yes, Kevin Feige is in the news for several of the meetings that he has done and some of the things that come out. All good things, in my opinion. First, he confirmed publicly that Agatha Harkness will be returning. We are not done with her. That should not be a surprise to anybody. Whether or not that's in Multiverse of Madness 2 or Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, or where, don't know. But we know for sure that that she is coming back, and I'm sure she's going to have a lot to do with Wanda and everything coming back to everything coming to peace. Because again, remember, Agatha wasn't necessarily a bad person. She had her own motivations, but she was doing it for the good of the world in her own mind, because Wanda is chaos magic, kind of like Kang in her own way. Whereas Kang is trying to prevent chaos in the timelines, Agatha was trying to prevent chaos in the magical realm. So wouldn't be surprised to see her coming back. Also, Fahim held a company-wide meeting with all the writers, directors, storyboard artists, etc., basically saying we need to figure out what our rules of time travel are and solidify those, and don't deviate from them. And this was a welcome thing to hear, because this is one of the things that I think a lot of folks, as Lee mentioned, talk about time travel and all the time travel coming up. Time travel can get very complicated very quickly. So the fact that he's taking point shows again how much he cares about the product, cares about the fans, cares about all of this. Probably also cares about his bank account. But trying to obviously do all this was I think a big deal, and I am all for it.
Absolutely. What I found really funny, Ray, was that he came in to explain the rules of the multiverse. It shows you how close to the chest they've been playing this.
Yeah.
I was actually kind of excited to hear that that they had rules. That made me feel pretty good.
Yes.
The other thing too is that this is obviously for the films that maybe have not been filmed yet, or the writers. They're playing this right, because nobody knows what's happening. And again, I think the first real taste of this we're going to get outside What If. So What If is clearly going to deal with this, but I think we're going to get a Spider-Man. I can't believe they're not going to hold a Spider-Man trailer anytime soon. They have to let that out.
Yeah. I think in the next, at the latest we talked about this on Stream Lounge is Shang-Chi, but I hope that it's sooner than that. I hope it's before What If, honestly, but We'll see what happens. What If, of course, coming August 11th. Also, one other thing that was mentioned that I thought was very, very interesting this week, Kang was supposedly a late addition to the finale of Loki, that they re-edited or reshot those scenes, and that they were only going to tease him. But I think that people were mentioning that there was so much blowback from the lackluster ending of WandaVision that they kind of wanted to do a reverse WandaVision and just be like, yes, you're right, here it is, all the cards on the table, here's what's happening, we're sorry. And that Jonathan Majors, that statue reveal at the end was always there.
Right.
But him as He Who Remains was supposed to be more, you were supposed to have more time with Miss Minutes arguing on behalf of He Who Remains than He Who Remains there explaining it all himself. So I'm glad they went that route.
What I wonder is when they decided that, when was this written, and did they know that Majors was going to be in the role? Because my guess is he just kicked it so well in his interview or in his testing, that they're like, we got to get this guy on the air. I'll tell you what, it would have been a big letdown if now in hindsight, it would have been a big letdown if they didn't bring him in the way they did. Because again, that's what I thought they were going to do, is that there'll just be a statue and that's the way it's going to be, and no big deal. But I'll tell you, it was well done. I was really happy with how that episode ended, and set up the multiverse. And again, look, our prediction was that the multiverse would explode, and that's exactly what happened, right? Our prediction was also that Kang would be mentioned in some form. I was not expecting a full scene like that. And I was so happy that they did it, because it was really well done and accurately portrayed. Again, they accurately told his story. That was pretty comic book accurate. So it also shows you Marvel's not afraid to do that anymore, which is awesome.
Yeah, they're not afraid to step out of the realism column and step into the true comic book fandom.
Right.
So that was great. So moving on, other Marvel news. This was interesting. We talked about this last week on the show, about the importance of streaming, and the numbers came out for the opening weekend of Black Widow.
Yep.
Black Widow made $80 million domestically in theaters. It made $78 million internationally, and it made $60 million streaming.
Wow.
That is a big deal, because if you divide those other two numbers, that means Disney made more money on streaming, because remember, it's about a 50-50 split between the theaters and the companies. So that means that Disney made $40 million domestically, $40 million internationally, and then $60 million via streaming. That is a big deal that streaming is becoming not surprisingly a bigger moneymaker for Disney, and it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the future with more movies or things down the line, depending on what their agreements are with the theaters. But this is, if you needed any more proof positive, folks, that the future is here, the future is now. Streaming is basically pulling in just as much money as theaters are, and I think you're going to only see that disparity grow over time.
Well, I'm going to say it too. I wish we could go back to episode 3 where we were talking about what the future would be, because it is exactly as we predicted. Look, that is some serious numbers for Black Widow. Those are Marvel numbers. I'll also say, now I don't feel like the movie was, and again, this is by no fault of the writers, the directors. The movie was not up to par with some of the other films we're getting today.
Agreed.
It's still making Marvel money. Obviously now that we've seen the end of Loki, I'll make this prediction, Ray. I'm really looking forward to seeing the variant Captain America fight the Soviet Captain America or Captain Soviet, right? The red what's that? I'm blanking.
Red Guardian.
Red Guardian. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. So obviously Red Guardian's going to fight a variant of Captain America, right? I think we can safely
or U.S.
that.
Agent. Maybe he'll fight U.S. Agent at some point.
Right. We did talk about that too in time, or maybe when he goes back in time to drop off a stone, he fights him or something like that. There's going to be something with that, and obviously, the reveal once again of Valentina, which we totally predicted that. I mean, a lot of people did. So, Marvel doing things right as always. Really big deal that Scarlett Johansson was able to get that film made. She did say that she now feels like she has closure on the character. Of course, with the multiverse, we might see her again and again and again. You never know.
Right.
But I think the original Avengers that have died are really ready to kind of move on with their lives. I mean, RDJ has done that. Scarlett Johansson has done that. Chris Evans has been pretty vocal. You might get cameos, but that's about as far as you're going to go. So
they're happily moving on with their millions upon millions of dollars. So, speaking of selling tickets and speaking of making money, Black Widow did very, very well. RDJ and Chris Evans did very, very well, and Scarlett Johansson did very, very well. PAX not doing so well. PAX Prime, PAX West, whatever you prefer to call it. Typically one of the biggest conventions of the year in video games. Tickets have been on sale now for a couple of weeks, folks. And there's still plenty of tickets available. They are not selling anything at PAX. And obviously there's a lot going on here there's a lot of reasons. Obviously the pandemic is a big part of it. But also, people, I don't know. Yeah, I think people just aren't ready to go back. So this is a big deal. This is supposed to be the first major convention for video games, and it's flopping terribly flopping. Like even with limited capacity, by the way, it's not even selling. It's only selling, I think, about a third as many tickets. They can't sell out. This is a real bad situation for the game industry and for conventions in general as we try to get back to normal with things. Lee, what are your thoughts?
I mean, look, here's the deal. California put a mask mandate back in. I mean, the West Coast is not doing awesome with COVID today. So that might have something to do with that. I think the other thing, too, is that, look, it just needs time. They might have to go digital one more time if they can't sell tickets. I think it was just very premature for them to do this year anyway. I wouldn't go to the West Coast right now the way things are out there COVID-wise, even vaccinated. So I think it's just a little bit of fear. I think you might see tickets go on sale more or be sold more in the future. All right, but we'll figure it out. But yeah, no, I think this is just it's not ready. It's not ready, and and people are a little bit weirded out by COVID. Here's the other thing too, Ray. Like if you're under 18, you're probably not vaccinated. I mean, I'm not saying that the whole audience is under 18, but that's a pretty significant portion of the audience. People go to their kids.
For sure. Well, I mean, and that's the thing, too, is I think a lot of folks were also turned off by the fact that PAX said that they weren't going to require vaccination. And that they were said, everybody, but when you're in the convention, you have to wear your mask at all times. And I know for me personally, like, I'm vaccinated. Part of the reason why we talked about this last week, part of the reason why I got the vaccination was so I didn't have to deal with this stuff anymore. Like, and especially if I have to work the show, I don't want to wear a mask for 12 hours just because you might not be vaccinated. I think that if PAX really wanted to get people on board, especially people in the game industry, like talking to professionals at different companies, even within my company, they want a vaccination mandate. And honestly, I know my company, I mean, a little behind the curtain here, really doesn't want to do PAX because of no vaccination mandate. Because a lot of people in my company don't feel safe without that. And I think that these kind of half measures, which is something that I think, again, even the West Coast here in general is dealing with, the fact, again, that the LA, as Lee kind of was talking about, has reinstituted a mask mandate as of today. We are recording on July the 18th. Because, again, 65% of the population has at least their first dose. And the other 35% is refusing to do their job.
Right.
I mean, look, I get that it's a choice, but I'm going to be real blunt with you folks. There's a right choice and there's a wrong choice. If you are under the age of 16 or you are immunocompromised, like you're going for cancer treatment and things like that, totally get why you can't get the vaccine.
Right.
Totally get that. Completely understandable. If you can get the vaccine, if you can get it and you have nothing in your way of stopping you, it is your duty, in my opinion, to go get the vaccine. There's a right choice and a wrong choice. You have a choice, but think real long and hard, because honestly, it feels like, I don't know, are you scared of needles? What are you afraid of? I mean, I saw this analogy today. Like,
you're going to go in a direction we don't want to go here. But no, Ray and I are pro-vax. My wife is a doctor, a person of color doctor too. So, if you haven't had the... I say that because a lot of the people of color are not getting the vaccination via my wife. That's not me saying that. So it is a choice. It's up to you. It's up to us. America's doing a better job with this than most. And we have to move forward with this. But, yeah, in terms of PAX, Ray, I just think that's what it is. I think 60 to 70% of the audience is probably under 18 or around that age that maybe didn't get it. And the West Coast is not doing well. It was premature. And we'll have to see where they want to go with that now. But speaking of video games, Ray, I want to talk about this one because it's on a rundown about Netflix. Netflix aggressively seeking to expand into gaming. To the surprise of a lot of people, it wasn't that shocking to me. Gaming is becoming the place for people to go, right?
Yes.
So, what are your thoughts on that? All right. And now here's the thing: when Google came out and did Stadia, you and I were like, "It's a great idea. It's too early. It's just too early." Right. Yeah. And that was proven. They were the first through the wall. They got bloodied and they went down. Obviously, Game Pass has changed that conversation heavily. Right. So is Netflix, this is my question to you, is Netflix coming in as the Apple here? Are they going to figure it out? They have plenty of people on their platform. Are they going to go slow and do it right? Or is this going to be a black eye on their face soon?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they might be the ones to figure it out. Right. Again, we talked about this briefly a few days ago privately. Infrastructure is going to be a huge part of this. Can you get the internet service to the people who want to use it in order to play the games? Right. That was one of the killers for Stadia, is that a lot of parts of the world, a lot of the country, doesn't have the internet capabilities to support streaming games yet. If we can get the infrastructure there, and if Netflix is the one that puts the money behind it, or, because Google unfortunately didn't, even though they got it. If Amazon wants to do it, if whoever, I don't want to privatize the internet, but at the same time, if that's what it takes to get the infrastructure up to speed, and if these companies want to put forward and be like, hey, maybe that's part of it. Maybe Netflix not only becomes a video game distributor, but like Time Warner or AT&T now, I should say, or Comcast, maybe they become an internet distributor as well to get the infrastructure up to specs. Because if you want to get video games into the home this way, because this is the future. We've talked about this ad nauseum, right? Like whether it's through your television, whether it's through a box, however it's going to be, in this case through an app, this is the future. It's just a matter of the infrastructure catching up to what the needs are. Because as games get more and more complex, as games get bigger, as games get, they need more speed, they need more data coming down at a given time. And if you're stuck on, if your internet gets throttled at a certain point and your game starts to lag, well, then this is never going to work, right? So we need to get to a point where the internet is as open as possible, and that the infrastructure is in place for everybody to enjoy it, not just those on the coasts, or specifically like the more urban city type areas. And we get it to everybody. You know, I made the analogy a couple of days ago about 100 years ago. Electricity didn't really become a thing in this country until it reached like, you know, Timbuktu, Oregon. But like, and then like in the middle of nowhere in the woods, then that's when you had the electrical grid. That's when you had all this stuff. That's what it's going to be for the internet and for high-speed internet. Like obviously the internet is everywhere, but I'm talking high-speed internet, fiber optics, all that stuff. That's what we need if we want this. But I am thrilled with the idea of Netflix getting into the game because, again, we talk about this a lot. We don't think that there's going to be another console generation. It's just going to be, the next thing's going to be an app. The next thing's going to be built into your TV. There's not going to be a console. Maybe a handheld like what Nintendo's doing. We'll get into that one in a sec. But like a proper just sit down and play box in your entertainment center, that's gone, and I would say by 2030.
Yeah, I'll also say, too, you know, we talk a lot about the Microsoft versus Sony worthy rivalship that's going on. But the truth is this, man, there's other sharks in the water. You know, our next topic is all about that, too. There are other people jumping into this space suddenly very quickly and very aggressively to the point that it makes me think that, man, Microsoft might have been onto something when they were buying everything. They know Sony is not the only one to compete. Sony, in my opinion... You know, and Sony said this, like, we're not trying to beat Microsoft, and maybe they're trying to play the infinite game there a little bit. But, you know, they're not playing it right. I want to talk about the Steam Deck, all right, because that's amazing to me that there's a whole new handheld console coming out, right? And, I mean, the price point's very interesting. I'll say that. I think it's, what, $499, all right?
I thought it was $399.
$399 is $400, right? So, right. And you can play Steam on it. Again, it comes down to internet, as you said. But Ray, why don't you dive into that? Because this is another game changer, in my opinion.
I mean, you're going to be able to play PC quality games on a device that's slightly bigger than your Switch. Like, this is a big deal. Like, one of the big things that really hinders sometimes Nintendo sometimes is that they are the family-friendly console, right? And that with Steam, you get access to everything else, right? Like, it's literally like it's basically Steam trying to get into Nintendo's wheelhouse and basically kind of doing what Nintendo did during their weaker days, where it was like, well, there's Nintendo and then there's everything else. Are you going to go with everything else? Or are you going to go with Nintendo? How much does Mario, Legend of Zelda, Metroid, Donkey Kong matter to you? Or would you rather have Back 4 Blood and, you know, Evil Dead and, you know, cheap plug there. You know, all these other games, you know, Fallout and, you know, everything else that you could imagine under the sun. In fact, that was the problem is that I was thinking of too many games at once, couldn't get anything out. Like, there's literally everything else will be on this system. Now, again, how will it work? How will it, you know, what will be the quality of the games? You know, will it be true PC? Like, you're not going to get the quality of games that you get on a PC you built yourself at home, right? Like, you're not getting the highest graphics processor on a handheld device. That's just not going to happen. But... Not yet. But... this is a big step, first off, to force some competition, because Nintendo could rest on its laurels. Nintendo's making tons of money as everybody's second console, right? Let Microsoft and PlayStation fight out for the top dog spot. You either 50% of the crowd has Xbox, 50% has PlayStation, but like 75% also have like a Switch. So, and that's where Nintendo is making their money, and then of course all you need is those 5 or 6 AAA games from Nintendo a year. Plus, Nintendo also has a very good indie selection. But if you come in with PC now, you basically take the knees out from Nintendo's indie selection, because the indies, they say all the Nintendo indies are almost always also on PC. And then it's Mario versus the world. Nintendo's done that before, and they've survived, but they haven't thrived during those periods. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with the Steam Deck.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what it does from a business standpoint to the gaming industry, and just the sense of it is a Game Pass of timeless proportions, right? Because you can play a lot of other stuff on there as well for that price point. I mean, what's a Switch going for nowadays?
300.
Right. So it's just another player in the market. And again, look, I'm telling you right now, Steam Deck goes, look, man, if we get 15% market share, That's billions.
Yeah.
That's hundreds of millions. I mean, and look, Nintendo will do what it always does and innovate and change and adapt. But it's another shark in the water for Sony, in my opinion. It's not so much the market share it might take away from Nintendo. It's the market share it takes away from Microsoft and Sony that I find interesting, right? Again, we're seeing the early shots of warfare here with companies buying and acquiring other companies. That's typically a precursor for the war, right?
Yeah.
And we have people still lost in the console war, right? That's done. It's done. It's over, man. These are the internet wars, right?
Yes.
This is the internet verse, if you will, of gaming. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah. No, yeah, it is going to be interesting to see where that heads to. And I'm excited. I'm excited for the future. I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. It's good.
It's only going to grow. It is only going to grow.
As you always say, Lee, when companies compete, we win.
We win.
So
look, and again, we don't have too much. I'm not trying to jump this words. We don't have too much WWE news today, but I'm telling you, this competition has been good for wrestling, right? The competition of AEW and WWE has been good for wrestling, and that's the key. When companies compete, everybody wins. I'll tell you this, Ray, and this is the real trick, in my opinion, to winning any of these, whether we're talking about gaming, films, wrestling, sports, right? The key is that competition is good for you too, because it brings awareness to your space. Right, and that's the idea. And like when you think about the personal computer, I was just reading about this today. IBM got into the personal computing business after Apple really created it, right? And Apple took out a full page in the newspaper saying, "Hey, welcome to the game," right? It's good that you're here. And IBM took some market share, but all of a sudden, within 5 years, everyone had a PC in their house. Apple didn't have the power to do that, right? So again, the more competition, the more the space grows. It's better for everybody, and the consumer, at least in this country, always wins, right? But Steam Deck, kind of out of nowhere, by the way. I don't think anybody was expecting that.
No, we had Steam and Valve had always been saying for a while, oh yeah, we're working on a lot of stuff, and like they are notoriously slow, and you wonder how long they've been working on this. It's just it's really interesting to see, and it is fascinating for sure.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I love when curveballs come in like this. It's just so great. Speaking of curveballs, Ray. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, first off, briefly, just to go on the point, by the way, you mentioned, just because you mentioned wrestling, I do want to briefly mention it was very fun this week, as AEW for the past couple of weeks have been going back in front of a full live audience, traveling that whole 9 yards. WWE started that with SmackDown this week, just before their big pay-per-view Money in the Bank today. But what was funny was, of course, the first live audience, Vince McMahon came out with his usual swagger. Right. He looked around, and all he said was, "Where the hell have you all been?
Where have you been?" It was such a McMahon moment. Let that be the last great McMahon moment, right? Let that be it, because that was brilliant. So just to reset the show again, you're listening to Geeks Who Like Sports. It's a live podcast today on Clubhouse. If you're in the audience, you have a question or comment about anything sports, anything geekdom related, let us know or follow along. We have topics pre-planned, and you can enjoy the show. We're happy to be here on Clubhouse. We're looking forward to doing this moving forward. Make sure you follow us and check out geekswholiksports.com. Now, Ray, if I may tease another part of our episode coming out next week, or this week, I should say, we, once again, for the trifecta, interviewed Kevin Eastman, the co-creator of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, once again this week. Another phenomenal interview. It's just impossible not to have a good time with this guy on camera. To talk about The Last Ronin, which is, for those of you who don't know, I'll just preview it with the Ninja Turtles are all dead except for one. I won't tell you who, and it's about 30 years after they're teenagers and what's happening in New York City at that time period. It's really well done. But our interview with him is going to premiere later this week as one of our leaderboard interviews. Make sure you keep an eye out for that. Ray, any highlights from the interview you want to tease people with?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, for those of you who don't know the series, that the first 3 issues, it's a 5-issue miniseries. First 3 issues are out. Issue 4 is coming out in about a month. But yeah, I mean, we talk about everything from that. We also briefly touch on the new Turtles video games coming out, like Shredder's Revenge, and their involvement in the Nickelodeon All-Stars Smash Brothers clone. That was fun. But just the insight that Eastman gives is absolutely priceless. And even though it was one of our shorter interviews, just because he was extremely strapped for time, which is why, we're always very thankful that he takes time out of his schedule to talk with us. Like Lee said, this is the 3rd time. He's our first 3-time guest. So I guess we're doing something right, and I guess he's doing something right. I guess we're all,
The first time was good. When we got a second time, I was like, oh, maybe he likes it. The third time, I'm like, all right, we might be in with this guy. You know.
Yeah, we might. I think he's legitimately wants to go get a cheesesteak with us. No, which is great. We want to get a cheesesteak with him too. We love Kevin Eastman. No, he's a nice guy. I interviewed him a long time ago. Like over 10 years ago for the Turtles' 25th anniversary. So talking with him again for the 35th anniversary, this new Last Ronin series has been a lot of fun, right. For sure. And
one of my favorite questions that I asked him, I won't reveal the answer, but I asked him, how hard is it to kill the turtles, which I said are kind of like your own children, without getting gory, and he actually gave a really good answer to that. So. Check that out. Obviously, the Last Ronin issues 1, 2, and 3. Almost said episode. Issues 1, 2, and 3 are out now. It is one of the better comics I've read over the last 20 years, for lack of a better reference point there. I'm not kidding. It's really good.
Yeah, it is really good.
Keep an eye out for that episode. And I think that's going to turn us to sports, Ray.
Sort of. Not quite. We will get to basketball shortly, but before we get to real basketball, we've got fake basketball.
Well, sports, yeah. That's
yeah. So, and speaking of cartoons and things from our childhood, the new Space Jam movie is out, of course, starring LeBron James and all the Looney Tunes. I have not watched it. It is not for me. I am not interested.
That's true. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I mean, I am not. I am not interested at all in the new Space Jam. But Lee, you have children, so you had to watch it. What were your thoughts?
Ray, I'm not going to lie to you. I enjoyed this far, far more than I thought I would. This is the first movie that I might inspire you to take a peek at this. All right, I actually laughed out loud 4 or 5 times in this film. All right, now let me tell you kind of my process for it. I went into it with the original Space Jam mindset. So I kind of went into it being a young kid in my own head. I was with my kids, which made it even more fun. And I wasn't expecting anything, right? Like if you go into this film as an adult expecting it to be like a Marvel film or an adult film, not an adult film, but like something you would watch as an adult, you're going to be disappointed. Yeah, no, it's definitely not one of those. I will tell you this. It's a very similar story to the first one, but not the same. I thought LeBron actually did a really good job. He kind of makes himself a bad guy in it, which I thought was brave of him. The other thing, too, is, and I'm sure people have seen this reported, man, they dive all the way into Warner Brothers IP on this. I mean, everything, Ray. At one point,
I've already seen a lot of the spoilers.
Well, here's the thing. I'm going to spoil another thing for you. It's a minor spoiler, but when they're going through the Warnerverse, if you call it that, they do end up on the animated Batman and Superman planet at one point, and they kind of did pretty good with that, right? So I'm going to say this: they leaned on their properties too much in the film. Okay, it was like you could tell, but it wasn't to the point it was bad. I mean, and it's fun at the final game, like looking into the crowd because you really do see a lot of it. But if you can go into this movie like you're 10 years old, 15 years old, whatever, not 15, 10 years old, go in with that mindset. There was a few jokes. It was funny, Ray. I enjoyed it. I'm not saying I'm gonna watch it 10 times, but this was way better than I was expecting. I'm glad I took the time to see it. It was one of the situations like didn't want to run to the bathroom in the middle of it because you just don't know what's going to come up around the corner. I'll tell you the one thing that was a little awkward. So obviously Mel Blanc is not doing the voice of most of these characters anymore. So most of the Looney Tunes sound similar, but you can tell it's not him, right? So that was a little bit weird. You kind of have to you listen to Bugs Bunny and you can tell it's not Mel Blanc.
Yeah.
Right. But it's still Bugs, right? They make a lot of funny jokes about the previous movie. I can tell you this: LeBron with the writers, they did not shy away from making fun of him in this film. That's why I thought it was so funny, right? I was expecting it to be more boastful, but it really was quite the opposite of that. So I enjoyed it. I think it's something that is worth a watch, which I can't believe I'm saying that, Ray. I really mean that. I really thought this would be corny and horrible, but it was quite the opposite of that. It was funny and lighthearted, and it did make me feel good watching it. It's a satisfying ending as well. Space Jam: The New Legacy is out now on HBO Plus or whatever they call it, Max.
HBO Max.
Yeah, and in theaters, and actually beat Black Widow this weekend in the theaters, if you can believe that. So, my suggestion, Ray, is when you're in the right mindset, because I'm going to say this again, you do have to be in the right mindset to watch this. I would tell you to check it out. It's up to you, though.
All right, I'll think about it.
That's all I can ask as your co-host. He's gonna think about it, everybody. I did my job. No, yeah, I won't ever bring it up again. But if I won't be surprised, Ray, if I get a text from you once that says, "I saw it." Okay.
Yeah, that's about as far as I'll probably go with it. But we'll see. But speaking, moving from fake basketball to real basketball, right. Something I did watch yesterday was Game 5 of the NBA Finals, and I think it's gonna be. I originally predicted that it was gonna be Suns in 5. Now it's gonna be Bucks in 6.
Wow. Yeah, I'll tell you what. How great is it though? We don't know who's gonna win. How great is that?
Yes.
You get to the finals here. Finals again with an S in the NBA, not final like it is in the NHL, which is correct. But you get to the end here, and whoever wins is going to earn it. Not saying that the other teams in the past haven't earned it, but we haven't had a battle where there was no underdog. There really is no underdog in the series, right?
Yeah.
When you think about it.
No, it's true. I mean, the Bucks were technically the underdog, but both teams are banged up. Both teams are dealing with injuries. Obviously, a lot of us were rooting for CP3, but after the first 3 games of this series were terrible. The Suns blew out the Bucks the first 2 games. The Bucks blew out the Suns in Game 3. But Game 4, everything changed. The Suns had a huge lead. The Bucks make this huge comeback to steal Game 4, and then basically kind of did the same thing in Game 5, but they had the big lead. The Suns made it close, but then the Bucks make a great play there at the end. Drew Holiday with some tremendous defense to steal the ball from Booker on what would have been really the last possession, and then seal the win to take the 3-2 series lead. And in my opinion, basically that was the nail in the coffin. Whoever won Game 5 of this was going to win this series. I did not see the Suns winning Game 6 in Milwaukee, and now that we know the Bucks can win in Phoenix, even if it goes to a Game 7, I really do think that it's the Bucks' series unless something happens to Giannis, which, by the way, I mean, just call him Shaq Jr. 4 for 11 from the free throw line yesterday. The only reason why it was close was because the Suns kept hacking Giannis, knowing that he can't make a free throw. That's less than 50%, by the way, for those of you who aren't math majors. That's like 37%. Like, that is, like, ridiculous. They're called free throws for a reason. That was 7 huge points left on the board. I'm not saying you have to make every free throw, but you got to do better than 38%.
At least he takes the shot for his team, unlike my team, which we're not going to get into right now with the 76ers and Ben Simmons, who I don't hate the guy, but he needs a therapist, and I'm not saying that in a descending way.
Well, supposedly there's a lot of teams that want to trade for him, and if I were the Sixers, I would take the best offer on the table.
I would too. I would look. Here's my deal. Unless the Sixers are really willing to invest in him psychologically, and I really mean that. I'm not trying to make fun of him. This isn't a mental health bullying.
No, dude's a head case. Dude needs help.
He clearly needs some help in that regard. But if he can't get it in Philly, yeah, they should move him and get what they can with him. Because you listen, I don't care what team it is. If you have a player that's afraid to shoot, is not willing to make a big game moment, you're not going to win the championship. With that said, Ray, in terms of the NBA, I almost said NHL. We're going to talk NHL in a second. But in terms of the NBA Finals, I believe this is the most surprised I've been in a Finals or didn't see it coming probably since the Cavs came back on the Warriors when they were up 3-1. I mean, that was incredible, and this is one of those series of like our predictions. They're fine, but I don't hold anything against you if you're right or wrong because you just don't know what the series is going to do, and I think that's refreshing for basketball. It's refreshing for sports, all right, and it's a fun series to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it has been fun, especially the last 2 games. Like I said, the first 3 games were kind of blowouts, but the last 2 games have been a lot of fun, and I think that who would have guessed that it looks like that the Suns, who rolled through the playoffs, but they might be the Cinderella team that's the clock struck midnight on because the Bucks, maybe battle-hardened against the Nets, have really bounced back in this series in a way I did not expect. And, it looks like, I mean, they are the team to beat now as momentum has completely shifted. So that's the NBA Finals now, like you said, Lee, moving into NHL. The big story in hockey is we are getting ready for the expansion draft next week for the Seattle Kraken.
And the regular draft, too, but no one cares about that right now.
The expansion draft is the big thing as teams are looking to protect players and whatnot. A lot of folks are up for grabs. You're seeing a lot of one-year contracts in the hope of offering these players up to the Kraken potentially. But what's interesting is that certain players, such as Carey Price, who literally just took his team to the Stanley Cup, and Vladimir Tarasenko in St. Louis are exposed. And if the Kraken want to take on some big money contracts, you have two Stanley Cup caliber players just waiting for you, similar to what happened with Vegas with Marc-Andre Fleury a few years ago, and we saw what happened there. This is going to be interesting to see what the Kraken do and what their mentality is going into this first season. But if I am them, I mean, like, you got to hit a certain money level anyway. Why not spend it on proven winners and then fill out your club with some of these role players like, I don't know, like a Julien Gauthier with the Rangers or whatnot? Because as much as I do like him, he's on a 1-year contract. It's less than $1 million. The Rangers are clearly trying to dangle him in front to be like, take him, go, take him. Like, so, and I'd rather him go than some of those other players that they have exposed. So, Lee, what are your thoughts on the expansion draft?
So when it comes to the goaltending side of this, we have to remember the Kraken are going to take 3 to 4 goalies most likely. Again, they could take 30 players. We have to remember that several of these players are not going to be playing in the NHL next season to begin with. When you look at a Carey Price, we also have to mention Tuukka Rask, Halak. All these guys are available. So it does come down to money. But remember, all 30 teams outside Vegas have to put a goaltender up. So the Kraken have 30 goaltenders plus to choose from. If they go with Carey Price or Tuukka Rask or even Yaroslav Halak, I'll actually be kind of surprised. I'm not saying they won't, but the contracts are too large, and the truth is you got to build your top 12, you got to build your bottom 6. All right, and I think that finding that right cohesive group is going to be really important. Now, Ray, you did make a great point that Fleury was in a position where he really helped out the Vegas Golden Knights. But I talked about this earlier in the week. We have to remember the year they went to the Cup final, they played like 5 or 6 goalies. Fleury was hurt for a good portion of that season, and he's still very much the reason they went as far as they did in the postseason. All right, but I'd actually be surprised if they go after Price with that monster contract. That would not be smart for an expansion team to pick up on that right now. And Price is also an aging goalie. If I'm them, if they want to take on a Tuukka Rask, if they want to take on someone like that, go for it. But I think it's actually your second and third goalie that you pick if they do that many that are really more important. And I think there's other capable goalies on the market outside those franchise players. But we'll see. We'll see what they do. Again, with an expansion draft, everything's up for grabs. The other thing, too, is, look, a lot of teams, it doesn't matter who you are in the NHL, you're exposing some very good players right now. Philadelphia Flyers left Jake Voracek, James Van Riemsdyk out there, Shane Gostisbehere. So it's going to come down to the head coach, Hackstall, who was the Flyers coach prior, picking who he thinks he can bring together, bond together, and create a cohesive team on the ice. You know, one of the mistakes that I think NHL fans are making right now is just, pick the best players available. That's not what Vegas did. That is not what Vegas did. Vegas did not pick. They picked the right players. All right, and if you remember that first season, like nobody knew who Marcia Salt was before that season, or England.
Well, I knew.
You know,
I knew.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? These are not household names until after that season. Fleury was the only name. And yes, of course you did. So you got to pick the right players. You got to pick people that are going to go into the system. And yeah, you might lose a player that you liked, but everyone's panicked. It's like, guys, you just got to let it play out. It'll happen when it happens. We're all losing a player except for Vegas. People think Vegas should be included in that now. I don't agree. All right.
Well, and Vegas specifically negotiated that. I mean, they're losing out on $20 million. In order to not, and that was again part of their. I mean, also Vegas has only been in the league for a few years. I kind of get it. You know what I mean? Vegas should have been. Honestly, the Kraken should have came in at the same time as the Vegas Golden Knights. But that's a whole different. That's a whole different story.
The deal with Vegas is this: if they didn't go to the Cup final the first year, nobody would have any problem with this, right? It's again, and we've talked about this on the show before. People think Vegas got lucky. They did not get lucky going to the Cup final. They had one of the best introduction seasons, probably the best, in the history of the NHL. They had a massive why, and they had a good team. That's why they went. And yes, I don't believe the Seattle Kraken are going to be a bad hockey team next year. They're going to be very competitive, and that's the point, right? They're not supposed to come in and be the worst team. We saw that. We saw what happened in Columbus when it took them 10 years, right, to come up with a team. I believe they were the last team to make the playoffs in NHL history. Like, at the time of their expansion. Like, it was ridiculous. So, you want a team that's going to be competitive. If you have one of the bottom half teams in the league and the Kraken do better than you, it's not the Kraken's fault. Right? So, is it plural as the Krakens? Or I think Kraken is plural, too.
Kraken is also the plural.
Yeah, it's not the fault of the Kraken.
Yeah.
All right? But I'm excited for the expansion draft. I think it's exciting. I like the idea of a new team being born. The GM of the team is Ron Francis, one of the greatest playmakers in NHL history. You have the head coach and Wayne Hackstall. I think his first name is Wayne. I forgot already. Maybe it's Dwayne. Whatever. Hackstall is the head coach of that team. And if anybody, let's just do this real quick. The prediction of who they're going to take from the Rangers, and I'll give you the prediction who I think they're going to take from the Flyers as our home teams.
I mean, the Rangers just made that trade with the Lightning for what's his name? I'm blanking on his name now. Because we also need to talk very briefly about.
Yeah, there's a big trades for both our teams over the last week.
Yes. Hold on, I want to get his name. Barclay Goodrow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a chance that he goes. Especially now that Howden got traded to Vegas for picks, and a prospect, which was surprising because I thought he was going to be the guy. But I think that who is going to be taken? I'm going to say it's either going to be Gauthier, Blackwell, or DiGiuseppe, one of our forwards, our third and fourth line forwards. That's what I think it's going to be.
Yeah, I think for the Flyers, it's going to be Shane Gostisbehere, just because Hackstall has coached him before, and he really thrived underneath him. Jake Voracek is another monster contract. I mean, he'd be on the hot seat. I really hope they don't take James Van Riemsdyk. Part of me is hoping they're secretly hoping that they don't see how good he is on the power play and the special teams, and that we get to keep him because I think he's a big piece of the puzzle for us. Statistically speaking, him and Voracek would be the guys to take, but I think they take Shane Gostisbehere, young defenseman, thus freeing the Flyers up. So speaking of defensemen, speaking of trades, Flyers made a bit of a blockbuster one the other day, bringing in Ellis from Nashville, trading Nolan, Patrick, and Myers away. And now, Ray, this is as a Flyers fan, I was very happy with this move because it fills a gap that I've been saying for months, which is the Flyers have no defense after Ivan Provorov. And now we suddenly have two number ones, and we have very capable 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I think that's a big key for the Flyers. We have the goaltending now. We have a good defensive core now. All we need is a big goal scorer to play with Claude Giroux, which I think they're on the hunt for as well. And then the Flyers become insanely dangerous.
I mean, I was gonna say. I mean, obviously Myers is a nice player, but he's not an Ellis in terms of quality at defense. Like Myers is, like you said, probably he's a third pair defenseman. Ellis, immediately he's a top pair guy. Like that's a big deal.
With Provorov, that's scary. That is a scary.
Yeah, that is a big deal. And Nolan Patrick, unfortunately, has not worked out. He hasn't been a bad player, but he obviously has not been what you thought you were drafting with your first round pick a few years ago.
He had a very, very weird illness right away. He missed pretty much an entire season with some sort of illness that I don't know how to describe what it is. And something with his head and the way he was playing. He could not play ice hockey at the time. And then on top of it, he's number 2 overall pick in the draft. He just did not panning out. Now, with that said, he's going to Vegas. Yeah. This is a 3-way trade. I completely expect him to pan out in Vegas. I think we were talking about this. I think he's going to do well with another team. It's just not going to be us, and he needs to change his scenery. So this is a good trade from my point of view. And again, with Voracek kind of in the I don't want to re-sign here kind of mode, or I'm okay if I don't re-sign here, Patrick gone, there's a pretty open spot in our lineup and a lot of money that potentially available there for the Flyers to bring in a goal scorer, which I am going to say, if you can give Claude Giroux a goal scorer, he is a playmaker, not a goal scorer, really, even though he does both.
Right.
If you can put somebody out there with Claude Giroux that can put the puck in the net, the Flyers become very dangerous. They are very deep overall. They're just missing a few pieces. I think they're closer than anybody realizes.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, you have to imagine that your boy Carter Hart, as he gets older and is no longer just 22, he'll start to get better and more sure-handed in net. It was also a very weird. It's a weird year for everybody. A lot of teams in general, just because of the shortened season with COVID. Most of these teams now will have a proper preseason, which will preseason and off-season, which I think will get everybody back on track. Even with the Rangers, with some of their young prospects like Lafreniere, like I think he'll really have a good second year with a proper first year preseason under his belt, and I think that's going to be interesting to see what happens. Like you said, with the rookie entry draft, and then with the expansion draft, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with these teams.
It's going to be an interesting season for the NHL to begin with as things get back to normal. Our producer Caitlin was saying about the Kraken plural. Is it Crack-I? Crack-E? No, it's just Kraken.
It's just Kraken.
There's too many jokes there to begin with. But yeah, NHL still exciting even after the Cup's going out. Fastest back-to-back Cup champions in history. Yeah. Mainly because of COVID.
Yeah, an interesting year with COVID. So, moving on now. Speaking of champions, real quick briefly touching on tennis, Novak Djokovic wins Wimbledon, his 20th career Grand Slam title. That makes him tied for Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal for most all-time.
On the Mount Rushmore now.
Yes. I mean, I was going to say it's interesting because I always felt Nadal and Federer, maybe because they were always playing against each other, there was a lot more hype there, whereas Djokovic has quietly acquired these 20 Grand Slam titles, more quietly, I should say. I think it's interesting, but he's obviously the most dominant player of this era right now. Federer, obviously, and Nadal are still playing for the most part, but they're older. They're not what they once were. And Djokovic, just absolute pure domination. So congrats to him as he is now going for the Golden Slam as he acquires another Grand Slam title.
Yeah, no, look, there's not much to add there. You're talking about legendary players at this point. That's the Mount Rushmore level accomplishment.
Yep.
And he's up there with those guys now.
For sure. So we go from the peak of the mountain to the bottom of the valley. The Washington football team is in the news. As we move on to football now, the NFL, they announced that they do have a new name and logo, and it will start, and they will reveal it at some point, but they will start using it not this season, but the following season. So 2022, 2023, we will learn what the Washington football team will call themselves, but for this season, they are once again the Washington football team. I, for one, am glad they are not sticking with Washington football team. I am glad they're going to pick a logo. I am glad they're going to. They also said it is going to have nothing to do with Native American heritage or anything like that. So Red Wolves, that stuff is out the window most likely. But I'm fine with that as well. Happy to hear they are making the change, and I'm glad the Washington football team will be gone by this time next year.
So. I thought it would be funny if they did re-announce it, that they're just going to stick with it. We did talk about that. Some of the fans were for that, speaking to some of the season ticket holders. But, yeah, I'm with you, Ray. This is how this plays out, right? They'll be the Washington football team. They'll announce their name. Everybody will hate it for a time, and then we'll get used to it. The truth is this. Whatever they pick, and this is how you have to look at it, it's going to last 100 years. So I'm glad they took their time. I'm glad they did it right. This is a billion-dollar brand, right? A billion-dollar brand. So they had to do it right. It'll be interesting to see what they did. I think it's smart to get away from Native Americans, First Nations people with their logo, only because there's too much hoopla about it, and there's other teams in sports that go that way. So interested to see what it is, but I'll tell you what, good time to be getting a new name because that team is actually on the up and up when you look at them. So we'll see. What happens.
I mean, the only question is what are they going to do at quarterback? But if they figure that out, that they would actually be relatively dangerous in the NFC. But and speaking of indigenous people, sports team names, Cleveland in baseball, they are also preparing to reveal their new logo and name next season, I believe. So yes, that's going to happen as well. So so Cleveland, good for them. We go from Cleveland now though to Colorado in baseball. Home Run Derby and All-Star Game were this week, and
boo this sport.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie. I miss the old format of the Home Run Derby. I hate the brackets. I don't like the fact that the rounds are timed because you can't appreciate the home runs because the hitter is trying to maximize their time. So even the camera, you'll sometimes cut to a home run, but most of the time it's just on the players. And then you have these timeouts in the middle of a round, so you get these extra commercial breaks. And it just feels like baseball has just found a way to commercialize and ruin the most pure things they have going left. And congrats to Pete Alonso, back-to-back Home Run Derby champion, even though I was rooting for Trey Mancini because it was a better story coming back from colon cancer to compete and even make it to the final in the Home Run Derby. What a story for the Orioles and what a story for him. But Alonso is just on a whole other world when it comes to the Derby. Who knew? All the Mets need to do is face batting practice pitching and they would do well. Yeah, so congrats there. But the Home Run Derby to me is a joke. It's a shell of its former self. And so is the All-Star Game. I was Twitch streaming during the All-Star Game, and everyone was coming in. They're like, we'd rather watch you, Ray, because, God, this is boring. It's it's a joke at this point. And it used to be the Midsummer Classic, and now it's the Midsummer Crap Fest. Like, it is absolutely...
Get that T-shirt made.
Yeah, it is absolutely not worth watching at all. I watched the first inning because I wanted to see Shohei Ohtani pitch, and that was it. And same thing with the home run derby. I watched the first round. I'm like, I can't deal with this anymore, and I moved on. So so there you go, home run derby. Any thoughts on the home run derby, the All-Star Game, Lee?
Well, I'll be upfront and say I didn't watch anything baseball today because I'm not watching baseball this season. But I will say to you, the one story that I did see that is not being broadcasted enough because MLB doesn't know what they're doing. And Ray, you're going to have to help me with this. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe in terms of MVP and winners and stuff like that, you had an Asian player, an Australian player, and a South American player. Is that correct? In terms of like who was winning home run derbies and MVPs and
Vlad Guerrero Jr., who I guess is technically Canadian, because I guess he was born there when Vlad Sr. was in Montreal, won MVP.
Well, his dad's from the Caribbean.
Well, right, originally from the Caribbean, yes,
right.
but I believe Vlad Jr. is technically, if you want to get into semantics,
sure,
was Canadian because
so
he was born there.
Right. My point is that none of them were American. Actually, now the World Series moniker makes a little more sense. That is something that baseball should be celebrating, that this happened.
Yeah, well...
Right, that this is truly a global game, and no, outside of meme, I haven't seen anything.
Well, and the sad thing is that the sad thing is then you get guys like Stephen A. Smith who were bad-mouthing baseball for that. I don't know. Right. I don't know if you heard this. This wasn't on the rundown, but I'm going to throw it in there because what a talk about our bonehead of the week. Like, I'm just going to become a recurring segment because
there's plenty of people we could pick.
That is very true, especially in baseball. But Stephen A. Smith basically bashed baseball and bashed Shohei Ohtani because he only speaks Japanese. And it was very good of Jeff Passan, actually of ESPN, to come on the show the next day and basically, as politely as possible, kind of like contradict Stephen A. and be like, this guy is more American than you or I. He left everything he knows and loves for a better opportunity here without knowing the language, without knowing any people, and he is thriving here in a way that we have not seen literally in the sport since 1921, when the last time when Babe Ruth pitched regularly. Like, it is literally unbelievable what Ohtani is doing, and instead of celebrating it, Stephen A. Smith focused on, which, by the way, I mean, look, not again, but it's kind of funny because it's somebody who's constantly talking about racism in sports as a black man to then bash a Japanese person and have Asian American hate or Asian hate now for Ohtani because he speaks Japanese. I mean, talk about a pot calling the
just got here.
Yeah, like he's only been here. He's only been here like 3 years. Ohtani. This is his first full season. But I mean, talk about a pot calling the kettle black. So Stephen A., shame on you for bashing Ohtani. Good on Jeff Passan for coming to his defense. But it's sad that we're still at a point where you had to come to his defense.
Well, that and ESPN has completely lost its way in terms of, I should say, its mission, right, or statement. I'm not saying I'm against when people at ESPN speak up or speak out. Our feelings are that, it's a free country. You can say what you want.
Right.
Sometimes there's consequences to saying things, or I should say reactions. But yeah, this is one I didn't understand. It was massively hypocritical, and he took it on the face for that. He took it on the chin for that. So, we'll see how this moves forward. I always joke about I love America, but it can often be the United States of hypocrisy, and that was one example of it.
Yeah. No, for sure. Absolutely for sure. I mean, and we got a lot of baseball bashing to go through, folks. We are not done yet. Hold on to your butts.
Can't stand the MLB.
I mean, it's been a whole week of just bad baseball stories, including that one. Another thing that they're thinking about doing, of course, worst commissioner of sports, Rob Manfred, has come out, and he's basically talking about going back on some rules, adding some others. Some of this I'm for, honestly. Actually, I'm for all of it. They're talking about making the universal... Lee, as a National League fan, I want to get your opinion. Talking about making universal DH like they did during COVID next year. What are your thoughts on adding the DH finally to the National League?
Yeah, look, me personally, I have no problem with the DH. It's exciting. I think it's better than watching someone strike out every time. Obviously... previous people excluded. But it's just, I don't understand why it's taking this long for this. This is a traditionalist thing. It'll make the game better.
Yeah.
And again, right? So, Ray, if I'm not mistaken, here's a question with Otani, right? If he wanted to be DH, could he do that?
Yeah.
So that's not even a problem then. So that's my point.
That's the thing.
Right?
The thing is that, the DH is optional. If a team wants their pitcher to hit, the pitcher can hit.
Right. Then I don't know why it's taken this long. It is one of the most annoying rules to me. I don't understand why that happens. I think it's even more annoying when you get to the World Series.
Yeah.
When you play home and away, it's like, what is the point of this?
Yeah. No, I agree.
You know what I mean? And in my opinion, can create an unfair advantage for one of the teams.
For sure.
Right. So I think the current rule. I'm saying this as a National League former and National League fan, I should say. Right, I'm not being quiet about how much I don't like baseball, Major League Baseball right now. But if the National League team, in my opinion, typically has the advantage because their pitchers have been batting all season.
Right.
So if you have someone who knows what he's doing.
Right.
But I don't know why it's taking this long. Baseball is a snail when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, I mean they take way too long. Another thing they're looking at is going back to the regular game length for doubleheaders, so back to 9-inning games, and no longer putting a runner on second in extra innings. Going back against that rule, there's been a lot of blowback this season from fans. A lot of fans have been very vocal about how much they do not enjoy it. I, for one, kind of agree with them. I think that I just think I don't think, with everything that was wrong with the game, I don't think the length of a doubleheader or the extra inning rule was one of them. I don't know. I just feel like that the gonna runner on second rule it was a fun experiment. I don't think it's really worked that well, honestly.
Well, if we're keeping in line with shortening games, like just 7-inning doubleheaders, it's like, and the way I play that, it's like, what would you do if they're like, okay, we're only gonna play 3 quarters of football today,
right?
Or okay, guys, we're only gonna do 3.5 quarters of basketball today. What are you messing with the game? You're messing with the integrity of the game at that point. Now, the player on second base, to me, there's a little bit more of an argument there because in hockey, in overtime we go down to 3-on-3, right? And basketball ends. Obviously, it's endless overtime, but it ends.
Yeah.
Right. You don't see more than 2 or 3 extra sessions.
Not usually. So
yeah, I think in my opinion, it shows how bad of a leader Manfred is if they take it out right now. This has nothing to do with whether people agree with it or not. You cannot come to an accurate assessment after one season.
Yeah.
You need 5 years of this before you can come to an accurate assessment. He's a horrendous leader.
Yeah.
Horrendous.
No, he's a coward.
All right. If you're going to introduce something, you need to commit for 5 years, right? Unless it's so catastrophic that it makes sense to change it, right? And Ray, I think even you would admit, you might not like it, but it's not catastrophic.
It's not no, it's not.
Right, so horrendous leadership.
Yeah.
The MLB. And the sport is in danger. I'm calling this like I called the multiverse with Ray, like I'm calling no consoles with Xbox and my Sony in the future. Baseball is in danger right now.
Yeah.
If they are not careful, again, not tomorrow, but 30, 40 years on this route, deep trouble if they don't change things up. It is boring to watch. All right? I understand the statisticians, the people who love that side of it, the purity of it. I understand that because I love baseball.
Yeah.
But the MLB is a poor representation of baseball. All right? And it is in deep trouble if they don't figure this out.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think that, if they want to change the game and they want to change the rules, you know what? You know what they should do is they should actually add home make like you have a shootout in hockey or soccer, home run derby in extra innings. If after 3 extra innings the game is still tied, you go to a home run derby.
Yeah, I mean that's out there. I would like that personally, but that's out there. But look, here's the deal, man. I think there's obvious changes they can make to the game to make it better. Automated strike zones are one away.
Yes, which we've been calling for forever.
All right. Deadening balls
was ridiculous.
Here's the logic behind it's not, but what they did was ridiculous, right? If you want more infield play, there's got to be different ways to do that. I'll tell you right now, a strike zone would do that. Yeah. I really believe that. An automated strike zone would help with play on the field.
Yes.
But the MLB is just in deep trouble, and I just think that it's horrible for baseball. And, Ray, I want to say this too. Last week I did a whole rant about, that no MLB fans have stood up for baseball. When I speak about the MLB, I haven't heard any Major League Baseball fans really stand up and support the sport, right? And one thing I wanted to follow up with that is that I think it's because MLB fans are in pain right now. And I want to tell you, I feel for you. Because as a baseball fan, as an MLB fan, this must be really rough to watch.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and again, I equated it to like the spouse, the girlfriend, the boyfriend that keeps cheating on you and asking you to come back over and over again. Well, here's the thing. Major League Baseball fans are in love with Major League Baseball, right? Because most of us have been doing this more than 2-3 years.
Yeah.
Right? So this is painful. And I listen, nothing will change until the owners get rid of Rob Manfred. All right? We are not the first two people that have said that. People that we really trust in the sports industry are saying that he's horrible.
Yes.
It is piss poor leadership. He needs to go. All right? And Major League Baseball really needs to look in the mirror. This has been going on for too long, and there's been too many examples of them breaking the fans of the hearts of their fans, rampant cheating, horrible ratings. I mean, I don't know what they got to do to figure it out, but getting rid of Rob Manfred is the first step. And Ray will back me up. I am not typically critical of executives in sport. All right?
Yeah.
But this guy is horrible. He's got to go.
Yeah, no, for sure. He's been absolutely horrendous. The last new
Horrible.
rule that they're talking about is finally, and I am all for this as well, is abolishing the shift. Is that, and we've talked about this with our buddy Seth Everett. He's for this as well because it's a way to. I mean, you want better defense. You want more exciting play. Stop overloading certain sides of the field. Stop. Second baseman supposed to play between the first baseman and the second base bag.
Right.
Like the shortstop is on the.
They're called positions, right?
Yeah.
They're called positions.
Yeah. Like you can't have a left tackle in football play wide receiver. Like you can't, or I mean, like there are obviously super rare exceptions to that rule and loopholes, but like
I want to make a distinction to help your case here because there's going to be people like, well, hockey and basketball, defensive players can be offensive. Those sports don't stop. The reason why Ray's using football is because there's stoppages between plays.
Right.
That's a very key distinction here when we're talking about what we're talking about.
Right. Exactly. There's time between everything, right? There's time to move around with all this stuff, and especially in baseball. Like, I mean, there's a lot of downtime in baseball. And but again, not saying you guys can't have move like, yeah, you want to shade a guy up the middle, move guys a little closer to the bag. That's different. I'm not saying put the third baseman in right field. You can't put the third baseman in right field to try and protect against a ground ball that might go that way. Like it's too much. It's too much. And for the people who are like, well, why don't the hitters just go the other way then? I will say this. It is like
what?
it is like you're trying to tell guys who have perfected a swing and a style now for their entire lives. It's like telling a goalie to wear his glove on the other hand. Like for him then to suddenly try and smack the ball the other way. Right? And I think part of it is that part of the reason why you're seeing so many guys now try to lift the ball and why you're seeing more strikeouts and more weak fly balls is because to try to beat the shift, more guys are trying to just hit home runs. We need to get back. I really do believe that if we abolish the shift, you will start to see the offense in baseball start to normalize. Where you'll still have a fair amount of home runs. Like guys are bigger, stronger than ever before. There's no doubt about that. But you're going to start seeing more guys accept that ground ball single they'll get instead of worrying about, oh, I can't hit a ground ball right now. I got to try and hit a home run. That's my thoughts.
Ray, I'll say this. Automate the strike zone. Eliminate the shift. I bet you on-field offense goes up 25% from that.
Yep.
Home runs take on a bigger meaning. Right? Pitchers are insanely accurate today.
Yeah.
Right? So, you want to fight an umpire to make a good pitch. By the way, whoever says to you, why don't they just hit the other way? Your analogy is good about goalies wearing a glove on the other hand. It's like, do people know how hard it is to hit a baseball in Major League Baseball?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not realistic. It's not realistic.
Yeah.
So, that was a crazy story.
Yeah, that was. And we're not done with the garbage in baseball.
No, we're not.
Oh, we are not. And this is, we called Rob Manfred a coward, and I'm going to say this: whoever shot up the Nationals Park yesterday, you are a disgusting, vile piece of human trash. Like anybody who takes a gun into a public place and tries to hurt other people. This thank goodness there has not been a report of any casualties. That the 4 people who were hurt seem to all be recovering from their wounds at a nearby hospital. This is heinous. This is cowardly. It makes me sick to my stomach. And also, by the way, this is not me saying take away the guns. But I'm saying, please, can we get background checks? That's all I want, is just background checks to try and make this happen a little less. Because now, my first thought was, I was at a ballpark just a week ago. My friends were at the ballpark a week ago. We were talking about earlier in the show about going back to conventions where a lot of people mingle around outside. At what point does it stop? At what point does it end? That this disease in our culture, that we just sweep under the rug these kind of events, and we become apathetic to it. We become we don't have the empathy anymore for this. I'm not saying take away your guns. I'm saying just make them a little harder to get to. Do a 2-week background check. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of looking at? Do some mental checks. You know what? I would love that. Before you can get a gun, you got to have a therapy session. Like, I am so sick of these kinds of stories happening, not just in sports, but around the freaking country. As soon as the COVID lockdown lifted, we had 3 mass shootings in a week, like we're making up for lost time. I'm sorry, and we don't get political here, and it is not my intention to, which again, I'm trying to make that difference, but I have been sick, and Lee can tell you this, I have been sick all day and night from this, that this happened again, and this happened during a baseball game. And by the way, to the jerks out there who are saying that Manny Machado and Fernando Tatis Jr. Did a horrible thing by opening the gates to the field to try and help people get out of the stands because everybody was in a panic, those guys are heroes. Those guys opening the gates to the field and telling people get into the dugout because it might be the safest place in this stadium, those guys are heroes. So I want to also say that, because for some reason, everything in this country has to be politicized. People's safety should not be politicized. It's that simple. That's the point. That's the point of all this. People's safety should not be politicized. Again, right choice, wrong choice. Stop politicizing people's well-being. I'm sick of it. People were hurt yesterday for going to a goddamn ball game. Lee, your thoughts.
Always the calm transition from the monster. Now, everything you said is right, Ray. Look, gun rights are a state issue. And it depends on what state you're in. Unfortunately, it depends on the rules for background checks, mental checks. I think that what you said is right. There is a better process here for vetting people that get a gun, or keeping, this is the other side of the issue people don't like to talk about, but keeping the guns out of people who are not legally obtaining them. That's always part of the issue. The
under-the-radar gun shows and whatnot.
Right. Because, the stats do show most legal gun owners, the overwhelming majority of legal gun owners don't cause crime, but it does not fix the problem.
Yes.
So that's why I agree with you on it's not about taking guns away.
And most gun owners...
coming up with a better process.
Most gun owners want background checks too. Yeah. I think it's like 93%. So what are the other, like...
It should not be a polarizing issue, and it is. And until both sides of the aisle can figure that out, these are going to keep happening. Now, one thing I will say about this event that is disheartening is, look, shootings are disheartening no matter where it happens.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's two sides to this. I think the reason people get shook up are because you see panicked people in a baseball field running on the field, and that's supposed to be a place of peace. It's not supposed to be a place where violence interferes. You're supposed to be able to go there to get away from that stuff. And maybe this did bring that issue up to some people, and the truth is this. In the inner cities around the country, Chicago, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, pick one.
Yeah.
The inner city violence is horrendous. Philadelphia has one of the worst murder rates per gun in the country. No one cares about that.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the problem, because it's kids getting killed. These aren't always adults. These are mostly kids under 18. And, Ray, I'm not saying that you're ignoring that. I'm saying that this is an issue in the country, as you said. And when it interrupts a baseball game, we take notice. We don't take notice when it happens to a 16-year-old kid in the city.
No, I mean, and then
so
there's
it's one of those things.
And it only takes notice when there's been a high number of it. When it's and God knows it is to tragedies of Sandy Hook or in Orlando at the nightclub, and the list goes. I could literally there's a list a mile long at this point, and yet we still do nothing. And speaking of baseball fields, we literally had a congressman get shot on a baseball field like a few years ago.
True.
And they still do nothing. So the guy who pulled the trigger, you're a coward, but also the guy who signs the bills in Congress, you're also all cowards too. Because God forbid you stand up to the gun lobby and do your goddamn jobs.
Right. So we'll see what happens. Look, the NRA is going down now, so I'm interested to see if things open up a little bit with this. But yeah, look, I'm not against gun ownership. That's my opinion, Ray.
Never, and again, never said I was against gun ownership.
Right.
Never,
right.
again.
No, I'm not saying that you're saying that. I'm just saying I'm not against it, but I am for better laws and better background checks. I think states need to get their acts together with this, depending on where you're at.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a shame. It is a shame that this happened. And I agree with what you said about letting people on the field. They were trying to get to their families as well. Trying to protect people is not a bad thing. So if you're rooting against those guys when there was a shooting happening, I think you're on the wrong side of this issue. It's my opinion.
Yeah, because I saw a lot of that on social media yesterday, and it again, it's just kind of like you're making the there's a right choice and a wrong choice, and lambasting Fernando Tatis Jr. Whether you like him as a player or not, that's a different story. But when you're lambasting him for that, for trying to help people. Yeah,
it was a little weird.
Yeah,
it's a little weird. And again, that's probably the part of the problem with the issue is it's polarized, and people always feel like they have to pick a side, and that's not everything that happens has to have a side pick. There's a lot of gray area in most situations.
Yeah,
right. And I think that we're so preoccupied with picking sides that we forget that, and we can't have good discussions. Now, Ray, I do want to transition to another topic. It's not on the rundown, but I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up. We have to talk about Tom Brady. This is not a small story that he played the entire season with a torn MCL.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? And this is the deal. Look, I understand for sport fans, especially if you're not a Bucks or Brady fan. I guess you can throw a lot of New England fans into that. People go, okay, how much better can this guy be? Like, why do we have to hear about it? Let's be honest, guys. He's the peak of human perfection as an athlete. And that when I hear a story that a guy over 40 played a whole season with a torn MCL, it got worse throughout the year, won the Super Bowl, and the guy's not a bad human being from most accounts, might not be the most vibrant human being.
Yeah.
You got to celebrate this guy. I don't mean put him on the stand and make him a king, but that's incredible that he played the season with a torn MCL, and he got it fixed. He got surgery, I think, a week after the Super Bowl. Yep. So I just had to shout this guy out again. The potential, the peak of athleticism, what he's done in the game outside his championships, that's incredible.
Yep.
And I think that if people want to keep fighting Tom Brady, look, you only have a few years left with this guy. I would enjoy watching him play football, win or lose at this point. I say this about other athletes that I'm not I don't like Sidney Crosby's team, but you'd be crazy not to watch Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin right now.
Yep.
You can do this in all
Dr.
LeBron James
Ovechkin.
not going to be around him. Yes, we should talk about that too. Like LeBron James won't be around forever. You got to enjoy him while you can.
Yeah.
All right. At some point, it has to trump your loyalty to your team.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I just had to bring that up.
Yeah.
Ray, your thoughts?
Yeah. No. It's a great point. I mean, what he did last year was unbelievable.
Unbelievable,
yeah.
right?
There is something that needs to be said though, is that like you wonder like the Bucks should also though have not hidden this injury. There is the thought that like in a league where there's a history of trying to hide concussions and all this other stuff, that there's a little bit of a gray area. Like they, there is also understandably trying to hide it so that obviously players don't target the knee.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why they did it. So again, from the medical reports I read, it was a slight tear at the start of the season, did not require surgery at the start of the season.
Right.
Then by the end of the season, it did. I would not be surprised if they went to Brady and said, you need to sign this document that says we're not responsible
right.
if you tear this thing.
Yeah, if it becomes a full tear.
But no, look, if honestly, think about this. If the medical staff came to me and said, we need to announce this. If I'm Tom Brady, I'm saying don't tell anybody I have a torn MCL. I don't need anybody coming after my knee.
Yeah.
Right? So
if I can still play on it, let's keep it quiet. Like
Right.
No, that's fair.
There was definitely a legal document signed, though.
Yeah.
That allowed him to play.
Yeah, for sure. And also, speaking of legal documents, all kinds of documents, Dr. Ovechkin, Alexander Ovechkin. PhD. Yes. He's doing a dissertation right now in Russia, which I always knew Ovi was smart, but like the dude is basically on the verge of like, I forget what he was arguing about, but we're talking like rocket neuroscience kind of stuff here. Like he's like in a whole nother league. And appreciate this too. Like, what are you doing in the off season? Oh, me, I'm getting my PhD.
Yeah. With the Ministry of Sport, you know who runs the Ministry of Sport in Russia?
Who?
Slava Fetisov, multiple Stanley Cup winner on the Red Army team. He was famously on the 1980 USSR team, but then won gold after that. So it's not surprising one of the greatest Russian hockey players of all time is running that ministry, and that Ovechkin is following suit. I can totally see that conversation. Alex, come over here. You give you doctorate. What do you study? Neuroscience? I give you doctorate.
Yeah.
That's a procreation and it's wrong. Don't do that, but that wasn't really a bad Russian accent. Anyway. Alex Ovechkin, PhD, coming. Look, he's got to have a career after hockey. God knows he's not set. Yeah, he doesn't make that much money, Ray. So compared to an NBA player, so he's got to find a doctorate to do something.
I guess he's got to do something after he retires. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too worried about Ovi, but I think that that is true. Comparatively, hockey players make the least out of the major sports. Again, if you're smart with your money, folks, trust me, a few $1 million can go a very long way. But yeah, speaking of international competition, we have to mention the Olympics are starting this week. And if you
they are,
if you think baseball is bad with how it's handled COVID, which by the way that's a whole other thing with Aaron Judge and half the Yankees getting COVID, it's been an absolute disaster as the AAA team is basically being called up to face the Red Sox this weekend. Again, another black eye for baseball. Thank goodness it seems like Aaron Judge did not spread COVID at the All-Star game. Being around Hank Aaron's widow, could you imagine that scenario if that had come to pass? Holy cow. But again, get vaccinated, folks. We'll save everybody a lot of trouble. And speaking of the Olympics and now COVID, already 55 cases have been attributed to the Olympics in Japan. And the games haven't even started yet, including 2 athletes. Our first 2 athletes have contracted COVID at the Olympics at the disgusting Olympic Village, because I don't care what anybody says, doesn't matter what country it's in, the Olympic Village is always disgusting. Athletes on top of each other. I mean, it's conditions worse than a dorm room. Absolute disaster. And the Japanese are panicking because while they've done a pretty good job of handling COVID so far, this sudden influx of more than 20,000 people, athletes, trainers, managers, people just to run the television crews, radio crews, etc., suddenly descending upon Tokyo has, of course, opened the doorways to countries that are less protected than Japan have been, and obviously have now reintroduced the virus to the country in a very, very bad way. Lee, what are your thoughts on the Olympics coming up in Tokyo?
I'm going to take the Riddler approach. Shocker.
Yeah, I
know. Look, I love the Olympics. They should have held off the next year, had the Winter and Summer Olympics in 1 year.
Yes.
We talked about this before.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, it'll be devastating. Not if they delay the Olympics, if they shut down the Olympics in the middle because they can't get this under control.
Yeah.
I did not understand why they moved forward from this. From a financial standpoint, I understood the pressure.
Yeah.
This is dumb. It's dumb, and I really mean this. I hope that it goes well. But man, this is going to be tough. This is going to be a tough one.
Yeah, no, it's going to be very, very tough.
I would still say, Ray, the Winter Olympics for next year are not safe. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is I would have, like you said, like they used to, do the Summer and Winter Olympics in the same year.
Yeah, just one time, and then hold the Summer Olympics again in 2 years.
That's it.
No one would have complained.
Nope.
No one.
Nope. But you know what? One group that did seem to do international competition well was the Euro Cup. The Euro Cup, I think there was one COVID case, and I think they clamped down on it super, super quick. And obviously, I'm here now to brag a little bit because Viva Italia, Italy won in penalty kicks in what was a thrilling come-from-behind victory. They were very shaky in the first 5 minutes of the match. Obviously, it seemed like their nerves had gotten to them, but they settled down. They got the equalizer in the second half, and then really dominated the entire second half. It was legit. I know a lot of folks who were rooting for England who legit thought that Italy was going to win this in regulation time. But to credit to England's defense, they held on. They forced PKs, and then of course the unfortunate scenario where Italy just has much better penalty kickers. They do. At that point, the talent, the cream of the crop, rose to the top. England put out some untested 18, 19-year-old kids, and they made kicks that were predictable. The Italian goalie made some great saves, and Italy, for the second time in history, only behind Germany now, who has 3, is the second-time European champion. Viva Italia! And also, shame on the English hooligans for everything they did after the game. Also making me even happier that Italy won, because those disgusting people don't deserve anything. Not England people in general, just the soccer hooligans who, of course, all the racist stuff and starting to trash buses and things of that nature. So, Lee, the Euro Cup. You lived in England.
Yeah, I did live in England, and I'll tell you what. There's two sides of England. At the same time, Ray, of the horrendous actions by some of those hooligans, also was a massive rising in England from their fans about calling out against that racism.
Yes, including the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Yes, yeah.
Right. It's good to see that too. One of the interesting things that came out of this was I was having a conversation with. I'll just keep the person anonymous right now. But the conversation kind of went along the lines of the person was surprised that there was that much racism in England, and shared that they were actually somewhat comforted. It's the wrong word, but that it wasn't just America. And it's one of those points. Racism is a global problem, right? It's a problem in America, but it's a global problem. It's not limited to here. So at the same time, it was eye-opening. It's also just shares how big of a problem it is, the intolerance of each other, and that it's something that we need to speak about more candidly. And we talked about black and white in terms of not color of the skin, but issues,
yes.
Right? And there's a gray area here, and the gray area is only discovered when you have discussions with people that maybe you don't understand or you don't agree with or you don't know. Right? We have a lot of experts here on things that they have never been involved with. That does not make you an expert. That makes you an outsider. You should learn. But congratulations to Italy on winning that. It was a great Euro Cup in terms of a tournament. Congratulations on England on getting there. Interesting situation there afterwards. So, Ray, I do have a mashup for you.
Oh, okay.
I do have a mashup for you, okay? So I was thinking about this. The World Cup brings in all the countries.
Yes.
Right? The Euro Cup just segments it. So what if in gaming, Ray, or we could do this with movies, there was some form of Euro Cup or international cup that didn't include the top players, right? The Marios and stuff like that, right?
Okay.
You see where I'm going with
this?
Yeah,
I've got a good one already. I would mash up.
You go first.
I would mash up Michael Bay's Transformers with Fast and the Furious.
Wow. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Who wins? Who wins? You don't know anymore.
We don't know.
Because they're going to space now. Now they go to space and Fast and Furious. So who knows who wins?
Exactly. Well, then you got Omicron and all the other stuff, all the space Transformers. Right. And, you got, was it Dom Toretto driving Optimus Prime and with his shotgun?
Let's roll out because we're family.
We're family. Nothing's more important than family.
Nothing's more important than family. I would put G.I. Joe with Captain America.
That's a good one.
And let him run
That's a good one. Yes. Instead of General Hawk, you have Captain America. Nice.
Who's that? Cobra Commander? Red Skull? Same thing. Same thing.
In a lot of ways. Yeah, that's very true.
All right, Ray, before we leave, the greatest international video game hero of all time. I think it's actually kind of obvious, but I want to see if you have...
international?
It's a non-American video game hero.
Well, technically, isn't Mario not?
No, we don't know. He's not real.
Yeah.
I mean, none of them are real.
Well, yeah.
I'll give you mine, and you can tell me. I think Lara Croft is the one.
Right.
I think she is the greatest international hero in gaming.
Yeah, I mean, she between the it's hard to say. I need more parameters than What do you mean by international?
The real world games, so it takes place on Earth.
Okay.
Okay, and they're not from America.
Okay.
So the rest of the
I mean, that's probably, I mean, that's your best bet. Like, I mean, yeah, because she's English. Like, I can't think of, like, anybody else in terms of, like, I don't know, Master Chief? Like, maybe? Like, I don't know.
It's not a bad one.
I mean, technically, he's actually, I don't know if he's from Earth, because he was technically grown. He was technically
grown.
kind of
yeah, they did a
brainwashed.
lot of
Yeah,
revealing
like,
on that.
like that's
So, anyway, maybe that'll be in a mashup for next week. I don't want to.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't like those parameters. Cause think with the first mashup,
G.I. Joe and Captain America.
Transformers and Fast.
How about this one? X-Men and the MCU.
Yes, please soon.
Soon.
It's coming. It will. Phase 5 probably. I would imagine. Like, because we're getting Fantastic Four at the end of Phase 4. So, oh, goodness. All right, I'm exhausted. I'm out of coffee.
Good episode. 115 was a good
115
episode.
was solid. A little different here on Clubhouse. Appreciate the folks who popped in and out. Appreciate all of you for listening and dealing with my tirades as usual. Appreciate everybody, of course. Again, follow us on Facebook. Join the Discord. We were keeping people up to date constantly on the Discord here when we were doing this. We'll see what we do next week. If we go back to Clubhouse, we go back to Twitch, but we will figure it out. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Before Lee, I am Ray. This has been Geeks Who Like Sports episode 115. We will see you all next week here with more Geeks Who Like Sports. Good night, everybody. Oh, and stay tuned for the Kevin Eastman interview later this week. Good night.